This is Borhanul Ashekin Prince. I am now in Azerbaijan to cover the COP29.
This is from Zakir Hossain Khan, Change Initiative Chief Executive, Change Initiative, and I'm just speaking from the Azerbaijan Baku from the COP29.
Mr. Mohammad Zakir Hossain Khan, we have a lot of expectation from COP29. Would you think these types of expectation will be fulfilled after the finishing of this COP29?
It is really crucial questions in terms of the expectation, in terms of the delivery. But the historical trend is that after the Paris Agreement, if we can focus on major 3 or 4 areas, like one is to reduce the carbon emission and the global temperature to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. Unfortunately, that is beyond meeting the expectation. So it is still that is this goal actually under the Paris Agreement is not happening or is not achieving. Second goal is usually the finance, climate finance, and this COP29 is one of the expectation is that should seal the global climate finance requirements. But unfortunately, what is the global trend? Global trend is yesterday we had that there's a discussions and Change Initiative has led on the report on the climate debt risk index. It has been shown clearly that.
I think this is your own research about
Exactly.
the climate. Will you tell about us what is climate debt and why developing countries, including Bangladesh, they are engaging or they are trapping on this climate debt?
That is the issue is that whenever the major problem is that whenever in Copenhagen Accord, there was a discussion and agreement that they should provide grant-based finance for the adaptation on the on the LDC. Even in the Paris Agreement, if you see then Article 9 has particular focus then prioritize the grant-based finance for the adaptation. But what we have been observing since 2017 that in the Bonn conference we warned that the way they are mobilizing the fund after the 2009, immediately the LDC country will fall in the debt risk, but they didn't address our concerns from the LDCs. So this time, the Change Initiative has initiated the first time in the globally to have come up with what is the risk of the climate debt risk. Climate debt means in the name of the climate finance, they are actually mobilizing more on the debt and some cases bilateral the commercial rates. This is fundamentally the opposite of the principle of the polluters pay principle, and fundamentally it is contradictory to the climate justice and equity. And some cases it is also unethical to give the extra burden to the already climate affected people for the LDC. So that's why we selected the 20 most climate vulnerable LDCs, including Bangladesh and other South Asian LDCs. So what is really concerning that we have predicted as well for the 27 and 2030. The concern is that among the 20 countries, only 2 countries debt risk is moderate. Rest of them either high or the very high. So, and very high category is the 4 countries like Sri Lanka, Mozambique, Madagascar, and also other countries.
What is the position of Bangladesh? Is a severe position or
it's
moderate?
going to be in the way it's been Bangladesh is almost per capita climate debt burden, it is $80,
Okay.
almost $13 billion. That was almost zero in 2009. So if and problem is that whenever any debt calculation comes for any country specific, we usually see the multilateral debt. But there are many funding has come as a bilateral debt, which is not been even included. What is the experience that whenever we had a data screening, we have identified that the SFO technology of the Mathabari coal plant has been counted as a climate finance.
Okay.
You can see the ways unethically they have been included. So even though with the climate related all the expenses, they have claimed we reported, and according to their data, still it is the risk that Bangladesh is heading towards the climate debt risk by 2030. If we should not be careful enough about the bilateral and multilateral debt. So question is that is this the really deliverable from the climate Paris Agreement? No. Okay. So that means the second objective of the Paris Agreement to provide the equity and justice-based climate finance is also not achieving. So this is the global stock take in 2024. From 2025, if the LDC should not actually come up with a very concrete position together about the 100% grant-based finance for the adaptation resilience, that would be really problematic. And finally, one final thing is that And one particular example is the loss and damage funding.
Yes.
It's a $1 trillion requirements. They have mobilized as less than $1 billion.
But when we entered the venue in the morning, we have seen that some protesters claim they demand $5 trillion per year. And at the same time, we have seen that LDC countries demand within 2030 $1 trillion per year.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Group 77 plus China, they demand $1.3 trillion. Would you think these types of demand is reliable, or it can be achievable from the developed countries?
One thing is that it is really reliable. I can tell you, it is underestimated.
Okay,
if you see any sort of climate disasters, it has both economic and non-economic losses. What is the claiming? It is actually even not economic, it is a financial losses.
Okay.
Whenever anyone, for Bangladesh, we have estimated that according to the National Adaptation Plan and NDC, according to for adaptation and mitigation, the government's claim is around $13 billion.
Yes.
Whenever we have calculated the opportunity cost, means the people itself are investing per year around $7.5 billion for as a disaster preparedness. And also they have a loss in terms of the losing work days. It is also around 10 to $12 billion. So if you can calculate exactly the effective demand for Bangladesh, it is around $40 billion. Apart from the, because this problem is that whatever they calculate, they don't calculate the economic losses. They calculate only the financial demand. So that's why I'm saying the $1 trillion is a much less amount in terms of the incurring loss. Whenever anyone has ousted from his or her ancestral property, you can see is 100 years of the legacy they have lost.
Yes.
You cannot actually recover
non-economical loss.
Non-economic losses.
Yes.
So what is the value of the non-economic? It might be due to losing their ancestral loss. This family might be, permanently fall in the poverty trap, and also they can lose the whole generations for missing generations would be. So this is really problem is that the people are here actually in the whole, the discussions. The problem is that they don't follow the justice perspective, humanitarian perspective. If you can really follow, the major missing element is that you can also observe that that whole the discussions in the climate negotiations, they are mostly mobilizing by the mechanical approach rather than the humanitarian and other approach. So that is really making the whole discussion.
I think human rights is one of the major issues to tackle the climate crisis. We cannot account it.
Right. The accountability mechanism is really very important because the question was that our chief advisor has claimed, what is the the justification of the negotiation?
Yes.
I also tell different times what we are actually negotiating. If we negotiate that we will allow them to reduce the carbon emission not at the expected level, means we are sacrificing more people, we are sacrificing then more natures, we are sacrificing more the whole ousting of the whole climate-induced migrants. So that's now it's time to the delivery. I can tell you that this is the way that they are providing the debt, and the change initiative has been exactly given the opportunity for the LDC to show them what is the real status of the debt trap they are facing, because earlier that was not the compiled indexing or data. We had a climate risk index, but we didn't have something climate debt risk index. So now they can come up with the discussion. So this is the reality. What you are actually mobilizing, where we are pushing towards a fundamentally debt risk. So how do you think that the LDC actually is moving here? You as a media person, what do you observe actually here?
Actually, I have talked so many delegations, including US delegation and World Bank. World Bank, they don't know actually how much amount is their account in the name of loss and damage fund.
Very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. At the same time, I have talked about US delegation. They prefer it's a loan, not grant, because they believe if we support a loan, there has a proper implementation of the fund. If we grant them the money, because they will not properly utilize, or they have no capability, capacity or efficiency to implement these types of projects. So this is a huge debate about the loan or grant. Most of the developing and LDC countries, they demand grant, but the developed countries not interested to the grant, they interest to the loan. So I think in the future it will be the most debatable issue, the loan or grant. So in terms, what is your position? What is your thinking about the loan or the grant?
Basically, their point is it is not. I can tell that the U.S. position is not guided by the evidence.
Okay.
I mean, you cannot punish the victims for in the name of so-called governance problems. If you don't really care about the human beings, you should go for the governance innovations.
Yes.
How can you mobilize your grant directly to the community, apart from the bypassing the national system? There are lots of examples that developed countries are mobilizing direct fundings, bilateral fundings to the the community directly. So whatever they are claiming, I am not with that actually. My position is that if they really care about the vulnerability, they should have to identify the proactive approach for the mobilizing direct funding to the local government institution as well as the community-led enterprises or something youth-led greenpreneurship. So they have to think in different manner. What's the problem is that they are trying to solve the problem within the defective climate finance or the global financial architecture.
But in the meantime, there has no exact definition of climate finance. So which basis parties are negotiating about the climate finance?
That is fundamental question.
Yes.
Actually, the whole negotiation is actually murky over and the confusing one. Whenever we are climbing as a climate finance, this is the grant-based finance for the adaptation. They are thinking that the bilateral loan would be the climate finance.
Yes.
So there is no, the convergence on particular that this is the common or universal definition we should follow. But at least they should identify, the LDC should primarily identify to demand to the LDC, to the developed country. So let us know what are not the climate finance.
Yes.
Exclusionary.
Yes.
So we don't want to go for the included, but rather these are not climate finance. So based on that is the benchmark created, then start the discussion. Yes, now come to the point. And my governance problem doesn't mean that you cannot tell that I am not actually running. Okay. So they are actually contradicting their own position
words,
because if they are claiming that grant would not work, the question is that why the Western countries are mobilizing the grants to the LDCs if that is not workable.
Okay.
So they are mobilizing. There is a data still. They are mobilizing the grants. That means, should I believe that they are actually putting their money into the hole, on the black hole? So then questions comes, why you have a right to putting your own money in the black hole? And the question is that you are spending almost $4 trillion per year for the war expenses.
Yes.
You are
exploration
providing
of the fossil fuels.
You are actually providing $1.4 trillion per year for the public subsidy by the G20 for the fossil fuels. And why you are not diverting at least 50% of the public subsidy to the climate finance?
Yes.
So the objective would be that at the same time the global carbon emission would be reduced. At the same time the current financial gap for the vulnerable country would be reduced. So they are not actually, it is a matter of political willingness, I do.
So it means that they not believe climate change is happening. If we go to the USA President-elect Donald Trump, actually he personally not believe climate change is happening. On this regards, we have seen that Argentina withdrawn their delegation from this COP29. We have also seen so many media outlets that Argentina may be pulled out from the Paris Agreement. Sure. Canada, France not joining this COP29. So would you think developed countries are really on track, or they are on the right track?
Definitely they are not on the right track. They are focusing on the companies. The 57 companies are exactly emitting almost 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. Those companies are totally out of the accountability mechanism of the Paris Agreement. That is fundamental problems.
Yes.
And the way they are actually mobilizing, and they are not actually focusing on the long term, the risk. If the developing country lose their capacity to the economic capacity and other capacity, means they will fall in the next time. They will fall in the economic problem as well, because whenever it comes to the purchasing power capacity, if I cannot buy your product of the developed country's product, how can you think that the whole economy will be the sustainable in the coming days. And particularly one important thing is that what is my concern is that I am observing the phenomena of the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol has failed because due to the absence of the USA, only 30% of the carbon emitters were in the agreement. So this time, the US president might focus into mostly on the profit-oriented climate investment.
Just transition
because
yes.
Elon Musk is there. So due to the Elon Musk, he might be interested more on the business, on the renewable and electric vehicles and other business, rather than to provide the grant-based finance for the adaptation resilience. So one thing is that to deal with the reality, and other thing is that to deal with to take the just position on the idealistic scenario.
So under these circumstances, what is the fate of Paris Agreement? Kyoto Protocol is already failed. Paris Agreement is going to fail.
I'm not saying the Paris Agreement will fail, but I can tell it is confirmed that Paris Agreement, the objectives of the Paris Agreement would not be achievable. The way the global, especially developed countries mobilizing. And I can tell you that I don't see the real political will of the developed country leaderships, and they are much more focusing on the immediate gain rather than to sustain the planet and people of the, and they are not actually, they are taking the position of the silo point of view rather than to holistic approach that this planet, one thing is that nature has no geographical boundary.
Yes.
The Paris Agreement has failed to ensure that to capture the nature-centric governance. You can divide the two countries, but you cannot divide the mangrove forest Sundarbans. You cannot just divide the Amazon according to the geographical location.
Demarcation.
So you have to focus on the nature-centric solution, nature-centric governance. Otherwise, non-agreement on the ecosystem or the nature or biodiversity, that would never, there is no chance to have been successful. So we have to now focus more on the how to forward-looking approach, that all the agreements should be based on the nature-centric governance focus rather than the state machinery, state geographical boundary focus. Otherwise, you cannot gain, you cannot achieve anything at the end of the day.
This is the political willingness.
Right.
So without political willingness, we cannot do anything, we cannot move forward. Nowadays, there is a discussion on the table that is NCQG, Mitigation Fund, Adaptation Fund, Loss and Damage Fund. We don't know. We know is that this fund not actively working. So new goal are approaching, new goal are discussing. So what is the fate of NCQG? Already you have seen that climate finance 2 draft proposal already withdrawn. Third, maybe they are initiated to raise the table. So what is your explanation about the NCQG?
All are actually dealing with the numbers.
Yes.
We need the quality of the finance.
Yes.
We need the specifically 3 perspectives. One thing is that annual, demand base, how much money will country specific fund would be mobilized.
Yes.
Concrete time bound roadmap should be. And second thing is that on the quality of the finance. You are approving the project in 2024, the fund has been releasing in 2030, it is not the quality of the finance.
Yes.
That means whenever you are claiming adaptation finance, but ultimately actually it's a maladaptation, because whenever you are making delay with the same funds, means you are actually wastage of resources. Finally, third thing is an accountability system. Who are making promise? If they are not mobilizing, what is the mechanism of the accountability? If the country is developed country, OECD is claiming they have been providing $100 billion, but their report itself is telling that particular climate focus allocation is only around 15%. So what is the ethics of that, the credibility of their own claims? So that's why I'm saying that I'm not optimistic about the NCQs, rather than I should focus on particularly very much focused roadmap on the demand-based, country-specific vulnerability focused financing, rather than so-called, the so-called bullshit numbers. I'm sorry to say, but this is actually bullshit numbers. What we are observing in terms of the climate vulnerable people, it doesn't make sense. Millions of people are ousting, millions of people are migrating and internally displaced, but we are not getting the funds in the time.
Mohammad Zakir Hossain Khan, thank you so much for staying with us. Hope in future we'll talk with you again about the climate finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashik. I hope that, but at the end of the day, people and what I am telling about all the times, we should focus from the grid-based economy to the nature-based prosperity. Otherwise, the people and planet would not be safe.